She was just a teenage girl, but she claimed she was chosen by God. France was collapsing. War had destroyed the land, cities burned, people were losing hope. This was the time of the 100 Years' War between France and England, and France was losing badly. In a small village lived a simple girl, poor, unknown, just a farmer's daughter. Her name was Joan of Arc. She had no training, no power, no connection to royalty, but she believed something unbelievable. She claimed she could hear voices from heaven, guiding her, telling her she had a mission to save France. At first, no one believed her. Why would they? She was just a girl in a world ruled by kings and soldiers. But Joan didn't stop. She didn't doubt. She didn't fear. Because in her mind, this wasn't a dream. This was destiny, and she was ready to change history. She had no army, no power, but she went to meet a king. Joan knew one thing. If she wanted to save France, she needed the king's support. But reaching the king was almost impossible. He was protected, surrounded by powerful men, and Joan was no one. Still, she traveled across dangerous lands, facing enemies, facing doubt, just to meet him. Finally, she reached the court of Charles VII of France. But the king didn't trust her. In fact, he tested her. He hid himself among his court, disguised, to see if she could recognize him. And Joan, she walked straight into the room, ignored everyone else, and went directly to him, the real king. She spoke to him quietly. No one knows exactly what she said, but whatever it was, changed everything. Because after that moment, the king believed her. A teenage girl, with no power, had convinced a king to give her an army. But this was just the beginning. Because now, Joan was about to do something no one had ever seen before. She had never fought in a battle, but now she was leading an army. No one could believe it. A teenage girl, given command of soldiers, experienced warriors, forced to follow her orders. But Joan didn't hesitate. She wore armor, carried a banner, and rode into battle, like she had done it her whole life. Joan of Arc wasn't like other leaders. She didn't rely on fear. She didn't rely on power. She relied on belief. Before every battle, she prayed. She spoke of destiny, of victory, of divine guidance, and slowly, something strange began to happen. The soldiers started believing her. Their fear turned into courage. Their doubt turned into hope. Because Joan didn't just lead them, she inspired them. Their first major mission was to break the siege of Orléans, a city surrounded by English forces, a battle many believed could not be won. But Joan said otherwise. She said victory was certain, and against all odds, the army moved forward. The battle was impossible to win, but she changed everything. The siege of Orléans had lasted for months. The English army was strong, well-trained, confident. They believed victory was already theirs. But then, Joan arrived. Joan of Arc entered the battlefield, holding her banner high, not as a soldier, but as a symbol. At first, even the French commanders doubted her, but Joan pushed forward. She demanded action, no waiting, no fear, just attack. And then, the impossible happened. The French army advanced, with a force they had never shown before. They fought harder, stronger, fearlessly. Even when Joan was wounded, she didn't stop. She returned to the battlefield and led them again. That moment changed everything. The English forces started to fall back, one by one. Their positions collapsed, and finally, the siege was broken. A victory no one believed was possible. Joan had done the impossible. A teenage girl had turned the war, and in that moment, she became a legend. But legends often have enemies, and her greatest challenge was still coming. She became a hero. But not everyone was happy after the victory at Orléans. Everything changed. Joan of Arc was no longer just a girl. She was a symbol, a hero. People across France spoke her name with pride. Soldiers followed her without question, and the king trusted her more than ever. Under her leadership, The French army kept winning, city after city, falling back into French control. And soon, the impossible happened. Charles VII of France was crowned king in a grand ceremony, a moment that changed the war. And Joan stood beside him. The girl who once had nothing was now shaping the future of a nation. But power always creates enemies. Not everyone believed in her. Some saw her as a threat, others were jealous, because how could a teenage girl control an army, control a king? Whispers began, doubt spread, and slowly the support around her started to fade. Joan still believed, still fought, still trusted her mission. But behind her, things were changing, and she didn't see it coming. She fought for her country, but her country didn't fight for her. The war wasn't over. Joan continued leading battles, but this time, things were different. The energy, the support, wasn't the same. During one battle, near the city of Compiègne, everything went wrong. The enemy forces closed in, and Joan was captured, taken prisoner, not by the English directly, but by their allies. And this was the moment that changed everything, because Joan expected one thing, that France would rescue her, that the king she helped would save her. But that never happened. Charles VII of France stayed silent. No army came, no rescue mission, nothing. Joan was handed over to the English, alone, abandoned. The girl who saved a nation was now a prisoner, and her enemies had only one goal: to destroy her, not just physically, but completely. Her name, her story, her legacy. They wanted it all gone, and what came next was even more brutal. They couldn't defeat her in battle, so they tried to destroy her in court, captured, alone, and surrounded by enemies. Joan of Arc was brought to trial, but this wasn't a fair trial. This was a setup. The English didn't just want her dead. They wanted to prove she was a fraud, a liar, a witch. They questioned her again and again, trying to break her, asking about the voices she heard, trying to twist her words, to trap her. But Joan didn't break. She answered with confidence, with intelligence, with faith. Even the judges were surprised, because she wasn't afraid. She stood there, a teenage girl, facing powerful men, and she refused to surrender. But the pressure kept building. Days turned into weeks. Isolation, fear, threats, and finally, they forced a confession, a moment of weakness, a moment they had been waiting for. Because now, they had what they needed, a reason to execute her. She was only 19 when they burned her alive. The day arrived, the execution. Joan of Arc was taken to the center of the city. Crowds gathered, some curious, some silent, some filled with guilt, because deep down, many knew the truth. She wasn't a criminal, she wasn't a witch, she was a hero. But no one stepped forward, no one stopped it. Joan was tied to a wooden stake, surrounded by wood, by fire. But even then, she didn't show fear. She prayed, she stayed calm. And as the flames rose, she called out to God, a final moment of faith, of courage, of belief. The fire consumed everything, but not her legacy, because what they tried to destroy became even stronger. Years later, the truth came out. Charles VII of France ordered a retrial, and Joan was declared innocent, not a criminal, but a hero. And centuries later, she was recognized as a saint, a symbol of courage, a symbol of faith, a girl who changed history. They burned her body, but they couldn't burn her legend.